Jazz Notes podcast. I'm Ben Anderson.
I'm Chandler Holt.
We are recording this on June 9th. We are a little more than 2 weeks away from the NBA draft, so exciting times for the Utah Jazz. As always, we will go through the weekly news. Kind of a lot of news this last week, in addition to the Austin Ainge hire, which we talked about a little bit last week, but we talked about it before his press conference, and obviously more news came out from that. So we'll talk about Austin, what he said, some other movement from the Utah Jazz, both in the front office and some of their coaching staff stuff. We'll talk about that. We're going to preview Derrick Queen.
Yes.
Maybe the last full profile we do on an individual player. Yeah. And then I think over the next two podcasts, we have at least two, right? We have one next Monday, which will be the 16th, and one after that will be the 23rd. Mm-hmm. And then we might do one the Wednesday before the draft. Well, actually, the draft is on Wednesday. Yeah. It's on Wednesday and Thursday. So maybe we'll do one that morning. I don't really know. We're going to figure something out. So there's probably going to be three podcasts still before the draft, including maybe we'll just do a mock draft. And that gives us a chance to just talk about a lot of the players. Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of chances that if you look at a mock draft now, guys that are talked about at 11, I talked about this with Jeremiah Fears. I think might be on the board at 21. So I just want to talk about everybody just so Jazz fans kind of have a general sense of what to expect if you want to get 2 or 3 minutes on all these players that are expected to be in the draft. I hope there's some value for Jazz fans with that. On top of this will be, I think, our 8th player, 9th player that we've given a real 10-plus minute breakdown on. So we'll talk about Derrick Queen today. Find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at Holt Sports. Find us on Blue Sky at those same spots. As always, read us at KSLSports.com. And now you can watch this video at YouTube, which I think is a fun aspect, and I like putting in the articles as well. Yes. So let's start with the weekly news, including going back to a week ago today, some of the things that Austin Ainge said at his press conference that I thought were most pressing. So like you said, we filmed last week just before the press conference. And at the press conference, we found out that Austin does step in, as you had basically predicted, president of basketball operations. That's the highest title in an organization. He's immediately ahead of Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck. He also said that, in quotes, you won't see the Jazz tanking, which I feel like there's sort of two ways to take that, and we can talk about that in a second. And then also, I think he said this later in an interview, not necessarily. He said on DJ and PK.
Yes, on the KSL Sports Zone. The Jazz are most likely to use all 4 of their picks.
Yeah. So let's work in reverse order.
Yes.
Quickly, I kind of wonder when he said make the picks. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder if he was meaning the first 2. Yeah. Because second round picks, I don't know. Yes, technically, maybe just because they haven't made a trade yet. I think when you're talking about picks, it's just the second round. Who knows? Especially 53. We have no idea. So I think the first 2 picks probably, most likely to make them. I totally get that. There's going to be opportunities to move around, I'm sure, but you don't want to lose a trade. So maybe you just sit at 5 and sit at 21. And there's going to be other teams. Brooklyn has 4 first-round picks. Yes. 4 this year. Orlando has multiple first-round picks. San Antonio has multiple first-round picks. So there's a lot of teams that have opportunities to make trades. Not just the Jazz, and some teams may be even more motivated to make moves. So we'll see. And Austin Ainge, coming in as the guy for his first time, may not want to only make one pick. He may want to have an opportunity to make a couple of picks with the number 1 recommendation that he gets now. So, but yeah, definitely interesting. Not, hey, we definitely don't want to make this many picks or bring in this many guys, which is a little bit of a change in the narrative from what the Jazz have had in recent seasons, though they did end up making all their picks in each of the last 2 drafts. Yeah. And both with the most likely to use the picks and the you won't see Jazz tanking, I feel like a lot of Jazz fans took it as the bare minimum being truthful without adding any context. I think that a lot of people most likely to use 4 picks could mean it's hard to make trades in the NBA. You know what I mean? And then with the you won't see Jazz tanking, what is the Jazz roster going to look like on day 1? It could be a lot of switchover. So yeah, what did you take from the you won't see the Jazz tanking quote? Initially, interesting. And then I talked to some people after and kind of was told it doesn't mean you should expect a lot of wins. Yeah. I don't think they liked the way it felt. Yeah. Truthfully, I don't think they liked the restrictions they basically had to put on Will Hardy when it came to your opportunity to win games. I don't think they liked the goofy injury reports. I don't think they liked guys playing 1 game and missing 4 and then playing 1 game and missing 4. I just don't think there's an appetite for that, nor do they think that actually put guys in a situation to win at the highest level. Yes. Or learn to win at the highest level. Obviously not win at the highest level. They're not trying to do that next year either, but just give guys an opportunity to have a green light and win. If you still are playing Taylor Hendricks next year coming off of this leg injury, and Cody Williams, who looked like he was 2 or 3 years away from being an NBA player last year, plus your number 5 overall pick, plus Isaiah Collier, who's hit or miss.
Yep.
You know, I just think you're still going to be a bad team. And I think you're going to play them a lot. Now, I was told kind of somewhat specifically, like, don't expect 5 young players on the court at one time.
Yeah.
So I don't think the Jazz are going to totally like not have any veterans on their roster. I just don't know if it's going to be, and this is not what I was told. This was not what I was told, but I just don't know if it's going to be John Collins and Colin Sexton.
Okay.
You know, but I don't think the Jazz are going to be completely just all young players. I do think the Jazz want some more structure that they did lose last year, but it may not be in the sense of like guys who actually help you win. It might just be like kind of role player veterans that help give you an identity.
Yeah.
You know, kind of put guys in the right places, allow you to compete, but isn't just straight out raw tanking the way it was last year, which, you know, pulling guys. The Jazz really didn't pull guys off the court in important games or in important moments of games. Like they just would, you know, Lowry played late in games other than one in the latter half of the season when he only played the first half of the game.
Yes.
And Walker rested some games. And look, if the Jazz are, you know, their pick is top 8 protected. If the Jazz have the 6th worst record in the NBA next year with 10 games left to play, like they're going to tank.
Yeah.
They are. I know they're not saying it now, but you're still going to have like a 8, 9, 10% chance of losing your pick at that point. Like if the difference is, hey, if they lose 3 more games and fall to the 5th worst record versus finishing with the 7th worst record and a 25% chance of losing their pick, they're going to fall to 5th.
Oh,
they're going to find a way to get that done. So I don't think you're going to see tanking from the very beginning of the season. I don't think it's going to be as ugly as it was last year. But, you know, I don't think the Jazz are necessarily going to win 30 games because I think that would be stupid. But I've been saying this a lot. You know, I kind of said when you replace like the value of your bets, like I still think the Jazz could finish with 25, 26 wins even before what we heard from Austin Ainge last week. I think that's probably pretty realistic.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of rumors floating around about specifically Lauri Markkanen, but also these other veterans and what's going to happen. But we have a lot of mailbag questions about that.
Yeah.
So one more piece of weekly news. The Jazz have made some front office, lower down some scout changes and also a new addition to the coaching staff.
Steve Wojciechowski is jumping up from the Stars. He's been the head coach there. Coached at Marquette. He's just been around for basketball forever. I remember watching NBA Inside stuff when I was very young with Ahmad Rashad and hearing about Steve Wojciechowski's name for the first time. So he's been around for a long time. He's now going to be an assistant coach with the Jazz, following the same path that Scott Morrison had. He was the Stars coach, then jumped in to be one of the lead assistants for the Jazz under Will Hardy. So no major surprise there. But then other, I guess, kind of bigger surprises today, not officially reported yet by the Utah Jazz. At least I haven't checked my email, but Michael Scotto from Hoops Hype reported it, and he's very well plugged in. The Jazz are promoting Marquise Newman, who was he's already been in a scouting role for the Jazz, but he was the GM of the Stars.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that was his official title, but he was the GM of the Stars. He's now moving over to be the director of pro scouting for the Jazz. And Katie Benzin, who was the assistant GM, is now the official GM of the Stars. Okay. So, very cool. Stars having a assistant coach who's a woman. And they're changing the coaching staff now with Wojciechowski. I don't know who's coming back and who's sticking around. But also having Katie as the GM. And I've met her a few times. I've met Marquise a few times. Very smart people. Katie has a Ivy League background, transferred to Maryland, which is obviously a huge women's basketball school, and then played a handful of games in the WNBA as well. So she's played. She's very interesting, really smart, as is Marquise. I think they were excited about Marquise. So interesting. And he played at Utah. So he's got roots here.
That's awesome.
As well. So those changes, replacing a couple of other names, and I think we got a question about it. We can touch on it shortly. Zach Lowe reported on Friday that the Jazz had made some changes in their scouting. I think Chuck Terrell's one of the names. He's not that forward facing, but he's like done some podcasts with the Jazz. If you've been around the Jazz, you've seen him, but not a lot of. He's not the type of spot where you would see him a lot. If you're just a fan, you might not even know the name at all.
Yeah,
I believe he's one of the names that's been moved.
Okay.
That is out of work or going to a different team or whatever. It's not with the Jazz anymore. I believe. If I'm wrong on that, I apologize, but I think that's one of the names. So, and I can't confirm the other name. I don't know. So I don't want to speculate. But that's kind of my understanding.
Okay.
Now, Chuck, I don't think he was director of pro scouting.
Yeah.
So, and the guy who was, I mean, you can Google it if you want to, but I don't know if he moved or just got promoted. That's the other part of it. So, I don't think Marquise is like stepping in to take that job specifically. So, interesting. Let's talk about Derrick Queen.
Yeah, let's do it.
Derrick Queen. Big man from Maryland. Do we have his measurements pulled up? He did not have a good combine.
He did not have a good combine. He listed at 6'9" without shoes.
Yeah.
So about 6'10", 6'10" and a half width. And then he had a 7 foot and half an inch wingspan.
Okay.
And then I think he came in at like 241 pounds.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less than that.
6'9.25" barefoot, 7-foot wingspan, just barely over. So he's a plus wingspan. 9'1" standing reach, not huge. And you said about 250.
Yeah.
This is the type of player I should like. And watching him, I just didn't like it.
Yeah.
At all. And I hate to like preempt it that way of just like, this is not a player I liked. But you and I both kind of came in and be like, we'd be really surprised if this was the Jazz's pick at 5.
Yes.
But let's get into him a little bit because there's some stuff there. Like,
absolutely.
The reason I think he's not being talked about at 5 is because he's just way more of a 50-50 bet than some of these other players we've talked about. When it is Ace Bailey's a 50-50 bet, but the 50 upside is like, holy crap, you've got a 5-time All-Star.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Derrick Queen actually does still have some All-Star upside. He's just got some real downside as well.
I'm going to be honest. I think that, like you said, like Ace Bailey's upside is like All-NBA third team, maybe even better. Like he could be a absolutely ridiculous scorer. With Derrick Queen, I think his upside is like 6th man of the year.
Okay.
Like because my getting into this super early, my comparison from him is like a Nas Reed. He just does not have that shooting yet, though.
No, at all.
Yeah.
And Nas did as well. Now Nas was in like in terrible shape at LSU as well and got into much better shape, so that gives you some hope for a guy like Derrick Queen. But yeah, let's get into just kind of like who he is as a player.
Yes.
So he's one of 2 true kind of big men that it should be drafted in the top 10. Common Malawash, who's the other center at Duke, is going to get drafted. You're going to hear me say the word big man a lot with Derrick Queen because I don't know what role he plays.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the big thing right away is he a center? Is he a power forward? You mentioned he doesn't shoot threes. When you think about these like really toolsy, offensive skilled big men that are really in vogue in the NBA right now, shooting threes is a big part of it, and it's not at all for Derrick Queen's game.
Yeah.
Like I think he hit threes in 4 different games total. I think he hit 7 threes all season.
And it was super weird because like I think it was like coming up to the tournament, he hit like 5 of 11 to end the year.
Yeah.
And then before that, it was like didn't show it at all.
It didn't show him at all. But then the games he hit him, he would hit 2 in a game.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't make them. He didn't shoot them a whole lot. So it might be there. It also looks really weird coming out of his hand. He's got a really like kind of a single like and like a push. It's weird. It's a weird shot. But like so he played in high school or in the AAU with Cooper Flagg.
Yes.
And on that super team and looked great. He's dominated dudes every step of the way. Like he is ultra productive. What was he? Just about 17 points and 9 rebounds a game, just a hair under 17 points.
Yep, 53% from the floor.
Which is okay. You know, the league is obsessed with these like big guys you can run your offense through. And you look at, Jokic, he's not Jokic. No. But you look at, Alperen Şengün, you look at some of these big guys who can grab the ball, Julius Randle, and kind of make plays out of the post, et cetera, et cetera. That's the concept behind Derrick Queen. Yeah. Like that's kind of what you're drafting. That's what you're hoping for. A hub of a playmaker who can catch the ball in the post and do some stuff, get his own shot, or a guy who can catch the ball in the perimeter and kind of create a look for himself. And famously, I think the only buzzer beater in the NCAA tournament this year was by Derrick Queen to beat Colorado State. Takes his guy off the dribble in an out of bounds play and hits the bank shot to win. It's like there's some real offensive skill there. There's some real intrigue there. I think he's a really good passer. That's where his touch comes in. Like you can really see it. He sees guys all around the court and makes fun passes and quick reads and catches the ball and immediately moves it to somebody cutting to the basket. He's strong. He looks really young still, even though he's actually pretty old for a freshman. He's like 20. Yeah. But he's a kid. Yeah. He's going to get stronger. He's going to get bigger. And conceptually is the type of player that like when he's not playing around better players, which he went to Maryland, he didn't go to Duke. He didn't go to some of these like really high IQ schools. Houston would be a really interesting fit for him. High IQ school. How would he have looked there? I don't want to say Maryland was dumb guys by any means, but how would he have looked with better players around him? Maybe he would look really good. Obviously, he looked really good in the AAU in high school, playing with guys like Cooper Flagg. But while all those things are true that we just talked about, like the offensive upside, there's just a lot of bad there.
Yeah.
First and foremost, because of his size, his conditioning, which is bad, like he doesn't have a defensive position at all. He doesn't really guard. He doesn't want to guard. He's not a shot blocker of any kind. He's pretty ground bound, so he's not blocking shots. So he doesn't really have value there, and he doesn't move quick enough, even though he's pretty athletic, to be like a switchy center either. Yeah. So there's no there's a shade of Draymond Green when you think about like his offensive upside. There's no Draymond Green comp here at all.
No. And that's something like he isn't super tall. He does have some weight on him.
He's
right?
wide,
and he's super crafty on offense, but his lack of strength shows in some ways on defense, because sometimes he'll push guys off their spot, but equal times he'll let guys get to their spot. And like you said, he has no explosive athleticism at all. The way that he does all these Euros and sidesteps, he's super crafty on offense, but he is not crafty as a defender, like in any way.
No, doesn't read plays, doesn't make a lot of, like, he's not a defensive playmaker really by any means at all. He's not anticipating where guys are going to be. And then his effort level's terrible.
Yeah, and that's something that's super interesting, because on offense, you talked about him, like 1.9 assists doesn't tell the story at all, because I feel like he reads the defense really well, especially for a big man.
He's one of the better big man passers in this draft, if not the best, but like he's certainly one of them.
In the short roll, he's a great passer. And another thing that was kind of interesting is that I want to point out, 76.6% from the line, and then like we also said, he closed the year 5 for 11 from 3. And it's like, based on just how his body is right now. Like, of course, you talked about Nasrid, who came in and made a lot of changes. I think he would need to be a 4 in the NBA.
I think so too.
But if he is a terrible inside defender and he can't shoot threes, you can't be a 4 in the NBA.
Right. It's what the real issue was with Kyle Filipowski last year. And I actually think there's a lot of Kyle Filipowski here, where the Jazz kind of asked Flip to play the 4 and the 5, and I think the 5 was specifically like, you can be a worse three-point shooter and be a 5 in the NBA.
Yes.
You know, you can't be a bad three-point shooter and be a 4 really in the NBA anymore. And because Flip developed into like a 35% three-point shooter or whatever, all of a sudden he could play the 4. Yeah. If he was 30%, he would have to be a 5 and just be able to be a threat to be out on the perimeter. But then Flip is such a bad defensive player, like at least has a defending 5s. He can't guard at the rim at all. He's better the further he gets away from the rim, which is interesting for his size. Flip has a lot of value because now he's defending away from the rim, which is what 4s do, but he also shoots 3s at a high enough level that he can play the 4. Now you've hit a home run. Like, you got a real steal, it looks like, in Flip at the 32nd overall pick.
Yes.
Derrick Queen has all those same questions, but you're talking about using a top 10 pick on him.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if the three-point shooting's not there, he's not a 4, so he has to be a 5, but I don't think he's going to defend 5s at all, and he's worse defending away from the rim than even Flip was. So all of those questions are there for me. But like the smart reads, the high IQ offensively, like there's a lot of Flip stuff in that sense of it. His ability to create off the dribble, even like their love of the spin move in college, which is both something that Flip and Derrick Queen do a lot, are there. I'm surprised we don't see that comp a little bit more.
Yeah.
And where Flip has value. But again, the real value was the Jazz got him at 32. And, you know, if you had drafted him where you drafted Cody Williams, you'd still probably be okay with it. But in a better draft this year, if you're projected to take him at 10, it feels like a little bit of a reach from me. And then a huge reach at 5.
Yeah.
That would be way too high in my opinion.
I will say, though, like, we are talking about him right now for a reason. Like, I don't think the Jazz are going to take him at 5. I do think he'll be a later lottery kind of guy. But something that I thought was super impressive is, and I think Alperen Sengun is a really good
It's like the comp you'll see a lot of people say his upside
is even though he shot 20% from 3 for the year, he was in a lot of pick and pops, and his ability to like actually give a big man a dribble move and get to the rim is super impressive.
It is, yeah.
And then he like going in, I thought of him as a post scorer, but it's like he can drive really well.
Really well.
And which is why I think something super interesting is if he can improve his 3-point shot, because also he shot 46.4% on 17 feet plus 2s. So long mid-ranges, he shot almost 47%, which is pretty solid. If he can develop that, then his ability to drive and be crafty in the paint is only going to open up more if he's actually a threat from outside.
Right.
However, I do think we should touch on the defense a little bit more. On the perimeter, he's super upright, and he either gets beat or fouls a lot of the time. And then inside, we've talked about he's not explosive at all. This stat is crazy to me. Opponents shot 59.9% at the rim against him.
Okay.
59.3% when he was off the floor against Maryland.
Yeah.
So teams actually shot 0.6% better when he was on the floor. Kaman Malawash, 9% worse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
the difference there is crazy.
It's enormous. Yeah. You better have a super versatile defensive big if you're going to have Derrick Queen play on your team.
Yes, absolutely.
It's kind of the issue that the Rockets are running into. Like, even if you get the highest end outcome out of him, which is the Alperen Sengun, which there's flaws there. Like, Alperen's a lot stronger, I think, and actually craftier and probably a little bit quicker. like they had to play Steven Adams, which is fine. It was like kind of a fun lineup, but even though it had these crazy plus minus numbers last year, they didn't rely on it that much because I think it's hard to keep Steven Adams on the floor in certain situations.
Yeah.
Like you just got to have like an Amen Thompson type of player to play next to him. And even then, I don't know if it's going to work. They still lost in the first round of the playoffs to a pretty flawed team. So if you're going to draft him, you kind of have to build an entire defense around him.
Yeah.
Which is like, I hate that.
And that's the thing. You want to be doing that with guards, not a power forward.
Yeah,
you know?
I will hide a guard. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to hide a big man in the NBA defensively. And Derrick Queen, the problem is Derrick Queen, to get value out of him, you have to have him on the floor so much to run your offense through him.
Yeah.
So it means he has to be on the floor. And that means you also have to have other guys around him that hide him defensively. That's where it just gets really hard. Yeah. Like you talked about the pick and roll. He can run inverted pick and roll stuff. Like he can be the ball handler. I think that's interesting. He can probably do big stuff. He can probably, there's really some intrigue there. The effort level was terrible. Mm-hmm. Questions about his conditioning and then showing up to the combine out of shape was a huge red flag for me. Like, I hate that. It's like, this is your job interview. These are types of guys I generally like, and I just didn't really see it. I get it, but I didn't see the value there.
Yeah. I think that with all these guys, even Jeremiah Fears, like with Jeremiah Fears, I see there is a world in my head for him where he could be a 20-point per game, like two-time All-Star. Yeah. With Derrick Queen, I don't see the defense ever coming around. And to me, I feel like his ceiling might be like a utility big off the bench.
And the hard part is like the difference between Alperen Şengün and Kenneth Lofton Jr., like from a skill set standpoint, probably isn't that huge. Mm-hmm. They're way different players, obviously. And Alperen Şengün is an all-star and Kenneth Lofton Jr. is playing in China.
Yeah.
Like, both of those are on the table for Derrick Queen. And, like, it's not like, well, he's way more likely to be Alperen Şengün. I don't think that's true. Like, I think there is a real chance he is Kenneth Lofton Jr.
Yeah.
Who just, like, dominates lesser players, plays a lot of ISO, and it's cool, but, like, are you ever going to actually let him be that guy on your team over and over and over every possession? And then how hard is that to replicate? So that would be my fear with him. There's some Al Jefferson there, which is just, like, the effort's not very there. And even then, and the reason I say Al Jefferson is like the raw production. Like Al, you go back and you're like, this guy averaged 20 and 10.
Yeah.
And I think there's a world actually where Derrick Queen's like, his numbers are always there. It's like 18 and 9. This guy's good. Why do people not want him? And then he's on your team and you're like, I get why nobody wants him.
Yeah.
I totally get it. The numbers are there. The raw stats are there. It doesn't help you win at all. And I think there's a chance that happens. Even though he'll like hit big shots against Colorado State. And you're like, that's a winner. It's like, what did he do on the previous 10 possessions? You know, were half of them good and half of them bad? So that part of it's interesting. I also wanted to talk about this a little bit with the draft and why good teams who draft don't fall into this trap. Mm-hmm. We so often try and draft we just being NBA people in general, draft guys who are in vogue in the NBA at the moment without being able to predict like what the league's actually going to look like 3 or 4 years from now.
Yeah.
So like, the Jazz draft Trey Lyles because it was in vogue to have these like kind of multi-skilled bigger guys. By the time Trey Lyles was good enough to actually help you win on the floor, that was no longer precious because every kid in high school was also learning that skill. So they were coming into the NBA as good as Trey Lyles was 3 years down the road. Mm-hmm. So like by the time Derrick Queen's actually good enough to help you win in the NBA, which is going to be like his 3rd or 4th year in the NBA when he's 23 or 24, I wonder if every big guy coming in to the NBA has all those skills too.
Yeah.
And then what he's doing is no longer precious, is no longer all that valuable. And I think we do that a lot. And too often we're like, the in vogue thing right now is Şengün, is Jokic, is these big guys you can run your offense through. So if he has hints of that, draft him.
Yeah.
And then it's actually not that rare anymore 3 or 4 years now because everybody does it. Mm-hmm. And I think the value is just not there for me, especially when there are some interesting multi-talented value bigs later in the draft in like the 20s. And some guys even in the second round, Hansen Yang coming over from China. Like, there's just big guys who I think you can run your offense through that you might be able to get at 21 that are better value bets if you're a team like the Jazz specifically.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm pulling up Alperen Şengün's stats right now because I want to see what he shoots from 3. Okay, yeah, he is
not very good.
No,
it's way less than you would think.
Yes,
like 20%, right?
Yeah, 23%, and he shoots 1.2 a game.
Yeah,
so it's just like not really a factor for him.
Yeah.
I think that regarding Derrick Queen, I think that his floor, which is crazy because we talked about his floor maybe being Kenny Lofton, but I think his floor is higher than Jeremiah Fears.
Okay.
And I also think
it's nice to be 6'9".
Yeah, true. And also, I think that even though I don't think the Jazz will select him, even at, well, like if he gets to the late lottery, maybe the Jazz like trade up to 17 to get him or something like that. But I don't think it's a thought for them at 5. But with that said, I still think I like him with the Jazz more than I would like Jeremiah Fears.
Totally agree.
With that said, I still think that those are my bottom 2 of the 8 or so people we've done to this point.
If he's not going in the top 5, I actually think there's some interest there at Washington at 6. That's the first place where he would make sense.
Yes.
And after drafting Alex Sarr, who's like that multi-positional defensive player who actually can step out and hit threes also, like that's the other aspect because Derik doesn't shoot. You're going to need a guy who can step out and shoot threes, and like conceptually at least Alex Sarr can do that.
Yeah.
I think he does fit there if you really think you can get like high upside. And actually he's a Maryland guy, like he's from the area. So that might be where he goes.
That makes sense.
I think it's a little high. Boston makes some sense if you're going to, or not Boston, Brooklyn, makes some sense if you're going to be like, we're just going to give him so much runway and we're not close and we're going to let him like have years to figure out who he is and we're going to be willing to build a team around him. That could make sense. I don't love him in Toronto. I don't love him in Houston because they already have the better version of him in Şengün.
Yeah.
He might make sense in Portland as well.
True.
Because they have other big guys that are there. Like you could play him next to some of their existing players on their roster, and I think would make some sense. But even then, I just like don't love it. Maybe Atlanta would be fun just because you're just going to go like super high offense, but they're going to be so bad defensively if he's on the court.
Yeah.
And that's the problem there. Unless you think he fits. I mean, he would be really interesting to play pick and roll with Trey.
True.
You know what I mean? But I don't like him in San Antonio necessarily, even though Wemby is like the type of guy who could unlock him. And maybe at 14, he's just a good value bet at that point. But he's tricky. He's just he's a tricky player and not a guy I would necessarily bet on at 5. If he were to fall to 17, I think that's a real drop for him. That's where Minnesota comes in. Like if they feel like they can't pay Naz Reid, he just steps into the Naz Reid role and you hope he plays that. And even then, like you said, Naz has learned how to shoot.
Yeah.
So, I get it. I get the player. He's probably, if I'm a Jazz front office person, he's totally a guy I'm okay missing on.
Yeah.
He's just like, whatever. Fine.
Yeah.
I think there's better bets at 5.
And like you said, I think you have at least a shades of version of that with Kyle Filipowski already.
Yeah, who might be a better player.
Yeah.
He just might end up being a better player overall. So I don't think that would be totally out of the question entirely. Yeah, decent landing spots. Washington probably makes some sense. Portland could make some sense. And then San Antonio or Minnesota once you get really late lottery out of the lottery.
Yeah.
I just worry if he goes higher than that, you're putting too much on his shoulders.
Yeah.
All right. When we come back, we will get to your mailbag questions. We got a lot of them. Stick around. More Jazz Notes coming up next. Welcome back to the Jazz Notes podcast. Ben Anderson, Chandler Holt. All right, as always, we like to wrap up the show with our mailbag. You can find us on Twitter at Ben's Hoops, at Holt Sports. I send out a prompt every Monday at about 11 o'clock asking for your replies to our question. And then we read them on the show and answer them. And it's just, I don't have a prompt that's like, talk about this week.
Yeah.
It's always about the Jazz. So let's get started with some DMs that I actually got on Twitter, and we'll get in some Blue Sky as well. And then we'll get to the broader questions. But Dan, USU, the right blue, said, and this is just kind of a funky little thing. He said, Happy Father's Day week. Is there a father-son combo in Jazz history that's more formidable in their primes than Carlos, Boozer, and ideally Cam?
Yeah.
If the Jazz were to draft Cam. The truth is, it's like Frank Layden and Scott Layden, where Frank Layden built the Utah Jazz in the 80s and did an absolutely tremendous job, and then Scott took over in the 90s and helped build the finals team. Now, you know, how much of that was Scott, how much of that was Frank, I don't totally know.
Yeah.
I suspect Frank had a big say in it. But I think those two are, it's a big-time father-son relationship that had a huge impact on the Jazz. So
Yeah.
Kind of gets overlooked when we talk about, you know, the Danny and Austin Ainge aspect of it too, like a father and son running in the front office. It's actually not totally unique to what the Jazz are doing right now. So there's some father-son history there with the Utah Jazz. Not totally unique what we're seeing right now.
And I think similarly with the like you've seen the graphic of like points scored father-son duos, LeBron James and Bronny James. You could do John Stockton and David Stockton.
Oh,
in
yeah,
2018.
that's right. Correct. They did play. Both played in Utah. Trying to think of how many. Corey Crowder and Jay Crowder.
Yeah.
Both played here. Corey Crowder played for like 10 minutes. But like randomly, the Jazz kept a pair of his shoes and gave them to Jay, which was like one of the coolest moments actually in Jazz history. Like they had a pair of his game-worn shoes, which is funny. Somebody was like, we're holding on to Corey Crowder's shoes just in case. And gave them to Jay. So that was cool. Yeah. Eddie Brochinsky on DMs as well on Twitter. And you can always DM me. My DMs are open on Twitter. It says 2 dumb questions. We'll answer both of them. I think they're both good questions. It says, for some reason, I'm obsessed with the idea of the Jazz trying to get Reed Sheppard from the Rockets as one of their 3, or as one of these second-team success guys. Any idea how the Jazz felt about him going into the draft? Lowry for Reed and Green and whatever draft stuff has been a favorite of mine. This is the exact trade we have kind of mentioned. Yes. I think right after the Jazz lost the lottery, I'd kind of thrown out this concept of a trade for the Jazz. I think it makes some sense. Like, you consolidate age-wise, you trim down your timeline from being, Lowry's 28 and in his prime, and Jalen Green, who would still, I think, be the more primary piece in this draft than even a Reed Sheppard, just because he's older, he's a little more developed, he's on a max contract already. Might be able to be the lead guard on a team and maybe the lead scorer on a team, and kind of puts everyone else back into their spot of I'm the 3rd guy on the roster, the 4th guy on the roster, etc. And then Reed is like kind of your upside swing. Now, all reports are that the Rockets just are gaga over Reed Sheppard and love him, and that's kind of everything you hear national people talk about. It's like, but you didn't play him. Yeah. So what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, I get it. Yeah. I would be too excited about the number 3 overall pick, and I loved Reed Sheppard in last year's draft. There was no secret about that. I talked about it a lot. You could go back and listen to the old podcast. But if you didn't play him, you didn't play him. And they played a lot of other guards in front of him, including guys like Aaron Holiday played in front of him. So it's like, if you just wanted to play Reed Sheppard, you could have. They can't be that in love with him, even if they really like his offensive upside. Ime Udoka doesn't play guys who don't play defense, and Reed doesn't play a lot of defense other than, getting a lot of deflections and stuff like that. So, I don't think that's a crazy trade. I think that's probably appropriate value for Lowry. I don't know how the Rockets would feel about it. And I don't know where they are on Jalen Green yet. They may not be willing to give up on him.
And something that is a little bit concerning about that trade is I do think you would, like, just contract-wise have to bring in Jalen Green. And then it's like, if the package is Jalen Green and you're only sending out, Jalen Green and Reed Sheppard, and you're only sending out Lowry, then you're losing a forward and bringing in 2 more guards when I feel like the Jazz are already kind of...
They are pretty guard
heavy.
Yeah.
So it's like, I would want to get Jabari Smith in that trade potentially, and then maybe you throw them Jordan Clarkson, Colin Sexton, something like that.
Yeah. KJ Martin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like the idea of it as well. And you're getting younger overall with that deal.
And you still get like a high lottery pick, which is what you missed out on last year by not winning the lottery and drafting it number 10 and getting Cody Williams. So that's where... There's some, I get it. It's the reason I've kind of proposed that as like the type of trade I would explore if I were the Jazz, and maybe like where you could get good value back from Lauri Markkanen. Eddie, second question. I really like the idea of the Jazz trading down 1 spot with Washington and drafting Con Knippel, given it feels like he would fit very well with any top pick they could hopefully get next year, and Trey or whoever it seems like they would get to be a 50-50 home run swing. I'm not sure exactly where Trey Johnson would fit in this. It says, I would rather take the swing in next year's draft with a solid guy like Khan to support them. 5 and 21 for 6 and 18 seems fair, depending on how the picks are valued. Any thoughts about that kind of strategy? Yeah, conceivably, that's probably not like a bad value. You drop from 5 to 6. If you know the guy you want's going to be there at 6, and the Wizards are trading up to 5 to get whatever, Derrick Queen or Trey Johnson, because the Jazz know they want to get Con Knippel, but the Wizards don't know that. And the Jazz move from 21 to 18. I guess if you can move up and still pay a guy a little bit less by getting him at 6 instead of 5, I do think there's interest there. I do buy and subscribe to the idea of if you're going to be bad again next year and you hope you're drafting a star in next year's draft, I don't know if you take like the highest upside swing if you stay at 5. Now, that changes if you end up with Ace Bailey falling to you at 5. I just think that's a swing you take. It's just worth it, even if you're going to be bad again next year. But Ace Bailey, I think, does still have a chance to kind of be a number 1 guy on a team. If he's not on the board, and then you're talking about the high upside is Jeremiah Fears, like the all-star swing, I would go with a Trey Johnson or a Con Knippel, which I think are safer and really fit with next year's draft pick, regardless of who they are, right? Like if it's Darren Peterson, Con Knippel fits great. If it's Cam Boozer, Con Knippel fits great. If it's AJ DeBonsa, Con Knippel fits great. He always fits. He's so complimentary as a floor spacer, and Trey Johnson has some of those same aspects as well. I think that's really valuable.
Honestly, I haven't talked about this a lot, but I am somewhat I have been in the camp of the Jazz should take this high upside swing. And I've reinforced that Ace Bailey is my favorite prospect in the Jazz's realm. However, I also really like the idea of, because I mentioned this last podcast, which is like, if you take Con and then are just looking forward to next year, like that's not a bad thing, right? Like Con
absolutely.
is, I call him a high upside role player, and that's, again, not a bad thing. And then you have talked about how you think it's very likely that there's going to be one of these high profile guys that end up falling past the lottery. So moving up from 21 to 18 could be great to jump in front of other teams who may be looking to take that swing.
Yeah, if that's what you felt like you needed to do, and you've got all these future firsts still. If they're, if a guy we didn't talk about today, but like a Kasparis Yakashonis was there at like 15, all of a sudden you were like, oh man, like he was 8 on the Jazz board or 7 on the Jazz board, and he slips out just because a couple of the other point guards go first, Jeremiah Fears and Yegor Demin, and he drops. Then maybe you make an aggressive trade to move up to 18 or 15 and try and go get him. But no, that's kind of the boat I would be in. I worry that if you just keep taking high upside swings, 50-50 bets, and you get tails on your coin toss 3 times in a row over 3 years, and you just needed one to hit heads, but you never get it, like you've whiffed 3 times. Yeah. Like the Jazz didn't actually have a bad draft last year. Like Cody has not panned out, and certainly not the way they expected or hoped. But like I actually think Isaiah and Flip are good players.
Especially good value picks.
Really good value picks, but like I think guys who could be in your top 6 or 7 for like the next 5 years, 6 years. So continuing to add that is fine. I get it's not sexy, but it's fine. Yeah. And then when you do get the guy, whether that's through a trade or you do hit on a draft pick, which maybe that comes at 21, but maybe it's next year in the draft. I do think that's fine. Yeah. And again, the error, I think, in some of this conversation is the idea that like either a Trey Johnson or a Con Knipple doesn't have a star upside. I actually don't think that's true either. I think these guys' upside is high enough that with the right development, continued growth, like maybe they are legitimate number 2 overall players, like on your roster that are averaging 18 to 22 points per game. The way, you see it with good guards that step in and can play these big time roles, whether it's, the Austin Reeves type or, some of the comps we've had for Trey Johnson and the guys who score 20 points per game. So I think sometimes that gets lost in the conversation of like a quote unquote safe pick versus the highest upside pick a la Derrick Queen or Jeremiah Fears. I still think there's like some real star upside for both these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
While still having like a safer value, which is why by the way, I think they're being talked about at 5. It's why I think you get VJ Edgecombe in this conversation as well. Yeah. So, all right. I think that was it for my questions when it came to DMs. Look at Blue Sky really quick. Cardi says, we've answered this question a few times. I've been a Jazz fan for over 30 years and I've never been less interested in an upcoming season. Is there any hope to be had for the next 3 years? It's like, if you're looking for winning, no. Yeah. Like if you're and 3 years from now, 3 years from now, that's an eternity from now when it comes to the NBA. Next year, like if your hope is winning, I don't think you're going to get it. No. So no. Yeah. But if you like watching young players and the story changing and like maybe getting to experience some of the magic of like Darren Williams' first year, even though the Jazz missed the playoffs. Donovan Mitchell's first year, the Jazz did make the postseason, but you're probably not getting that this year. But like seeing the stars in their first year is fun. Yeah. It's a fun thing. So if that's what you're looking for, I think the Jazz are going to be able to offer some of that out there, and I think that's what you're betting on. That's what the Jazz were hoping for. They didn't get to show it last year. I think that's one of the reasons why last year felt so difficult, even though, as we mentioned, I think you've got good players in Bryce Sensabaugh. I think you've got good players in Isaiah Collier and good players in Kyle Filipowski.
This is going to be a broken record statement for our podcast, but the Jazz are bringing in their best prospect in the last 3-5 years.
Yeah. Like the best prospect they've had since they drafted Donovan Mitchell. Yeah, absolutely. And Donovan was, again, the 13th or 14th pick or whatever, and they traded for him on draft night. Like, that is how quickly things change. Yes. Nobody thought Donovan was going to be close to this good. Nobody. Yeah. Even the Jazz. If the Jazz thought Donovan was going to be a multi-time All-Star, they would have traded up to the 2nd overall pick to get him and given up whatever they, you name it, name the price. Yeah. We'll move up and get him. So they didn't know that either. So that's why these guys always have a lot of upside. Jake, the link's on Blue Sky that we'll get over to Twitter. Says, it feels like the internet's trying to trade the entire Jazz roster. What Jazz players would you actively try to trade just to move, even with a bad return? So I think this gets into the question of like, who requires the Godfather offer? And there's some other questions on Twitter that I think kind of tie into this. Yeah. Who would you take like equal value and who would you even take lesser value on? I think because the Jazz are still going to value the top 8 overall pick next year, you probably are willing to take a little bit lesser value on some of the good veterans. Yes. Which I think the names are obviously John Collins and Colin Sexton. Okay. I don't think you're taking like 75 cents on the dollar for Lowry. I don't, because the problem is the amount of salary you have to take back. Like a bad $30 million player is really restrictive.
Yeah.
A guy who makes $30 million and doesn't help you win and you're saddled with their deal really stinks. And Lowry has value. Like, I get he had a bad year last year. I don't think teams that are smart are going to look at Lowry and be like 7-footer who we know shoots 40% from three realistically. Didn't last year, but realistically that's who he is and can play 35 minutes a night. That guy has value. And they're not going to think they're going to get him from the Jazz for nothing.
Yeah.
So if I were the Jazz in that sense, like, I need a good offer for Lowry. It doesn't have to be the Godfather, like a deal I can't refuse, but like I'm not taking a real discount on Lowry at all just to get him off the record, off the roster. I don't think you have to do that at all.
I have 4 players who are trade candidates. In reality, there's more than that, but I'm going to break it into 4 categories. At the top, it's maybe more than they're worth, maybe not Godfather, but that's Lauri Markkanen. Like you're not taking a deal, like you said. Then I think in the get what they're worth, I have Colin Sexton and John Collins. Both are like I think can come in and instantly contribute to winning, and they don't have to slide into some super special role. And then for maybe taking a little bit less than it's worth, I would say Jordan Clarkson, just because he's already done so much for Utah, and it'd be like, go to the Knicks, go to the Clippers.
Yeah, we want to put you in a spot where you can win.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't fit our timeline right now, even though we love you. Like, actually, the sign that we love you is that we're going to put you in a spot to go play somewhere that you are being utilized, and you don't have this wonky plantar fasciitis injury that. When I asked Jordan if he could play if it was a playoffs, he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." Right. Yes, I could see that as well. Maybe you take a little bit less on Colin and John just because it's like the upside is you get the 8th overall pick out of it, or the top 8 pick protected. Like, so you don't need to be like blow your socks off for John Collins or Colin Sexton, but you're not trading them for like 2 expiring contracts that are never going to play.
Yeah,
like you need more than KJ Martin back.
Yes,
And then I'm curious on some of the young players, how they would approach it, Keontae, how do they value him? Cody, how do they value him? Like, would they still try and sell now on Cody for some team that thinks that, like, there's some upside there? I think you would be selling really low if you traded Cody now.
Really low.
I would rather, honestly, probably hold on to Cody and see if he develops than, like, trade him for, like, a late first and just be like, well, at least we got something back.
Yeah.
And maybe the Jazz feel totally differently. But that's when you look at a player with that size and potential skill set still, I think I would hold on to him.
All right, over to X now.
Yeah, I think that answers the question for Jake. All right.
First up from Dre Madashaw, and we prefaced this earlier. There are reports that the Jazz let go of a couple of their scouts, and the rumor is that is because of the past 2 drafts, mainly Cody Williams. Is there any truth to that correlation, or is it because they were getting ready for Ainge to bring in his own guys, or neither?
I bet it's a little bit of both. I bet in some sense. Look, like, I don't think the Austin Ainge stuff came together in 3 days.
Yeah.
Or like a day and a half. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of suspect the Jazz knew they were going to bring somebody in. Ryan wanted to bring somebody, reached out to Austin. Austin was like, yeah, I got to do it, but I got to do it now. I kind of suspect the Jazz made room knowing that whoever came in would want to have some say.
Yeah.
And there's overlapping roles and maybe some guys who they don't feel like have filled the value that they specifically want or play are operating in a role that will now be filled by whoever they're bringing in, which is Austin Ainge's role. So like the idea that the Jazz were like, Cody was such a bust, we're firing people. I think I would be really surprised if that's the case. And by the way, that's not what Zach Lowe said last week at all. Like, he talked about like how rough of a season, which Cody did. Cody had a really bad rookie season. It would be silly from the Jazz's perspective. And if they did, I think it was wrong of the Jazz to do this. If you fired someone specifically because they recommended Cody Williams in a bad draft when you had the 10th overall pick, like, who around Cody are you just like, I can't believe we missed on that? Like, Jared McCain has an argument. He was there at 14, and a couple teams passed on him. Like, I'm going back to the 2024 NBA draft now. Got Cody at 10. Like, I know Modest Buzelis was better, and like there was a lot of conversation between those 2 players of like, who would you take? And maybe Modest just ends up as a much better player.
Yeah.
Like, what did he shoot from the 3-point line? Like, it was better. He had some moments. He ended up 36% from 3, 45% from the floor. Like, there's some stuff there. He averaged 8 points and 3 rebounds. Yeah. It's like, you're going to fire somebody because you didn't get Modest Buzelis with like the 10th overall or the 11th overall pick. Nikola Topic was hurt, hasn't played yet. Devin Carter was terrible, the Sacramento Kings this year. Bub Carrington I know he made all rookie first team. Like, I don't know if he was better than Isaiah Collier. Khalil Ware was good, but you weren't going to draft a center in this year's draft with Walker already on your roster. Again, Jared McCain was like the hit.
Yeah.
Averaged 15 points a game. It's really exciting. Maybe you missed on him. Like, you're not mad that you missed on Dalton Connect. Like, you could have had Dalton Connect. You could have traded for him. The Lakers did trade him and then had to take him back because they rescinded that trade. Tristan De Silva was fine. Jacoby Walter was fine. That's the thing. If you had taken Cody at 2 and 3, 4, and 5 looked like all NBA players going forward, that's one thing. It was like, we knew it was a bad draft last year. Mm-hmm. I liked Cody. That's why I'm still saying I don't think I would like give up on him totally, but like the physical tools have to progress. But like conceptually, theoretically, I think there's some stuff there. That's who you were drafting regardless. Yeah. Like, I think there's some revisionist history to go back and be like, well, Cody missed and Jared McCain hit, or Dalton Connect we think is X, Y, and Z, or you think that Modest Buzelis is going to be X, Y, or Z. It's like, we don't know. We still don't know, in all honesty. And different situations, like is Modest way better with the Jazz last year, or is Cody way worse with the Bulls? I don't know.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm not saying Modest and Jared McCain will never become All-Stars, but I see both of them also as like high-level role players. Like, will probably end up having an 18, 20 point per game season. But like, this isn't a Johnny Flynn and then Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, Drew Holiday go after.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. No.
So,
No, no, I kind of don't buy the idea that like that was the bust. And by the way, like, I don't think the people the Jazz let go were necessarily like the guy who would have made the decision on Cody Williams. Yeah. To be honest with you. I could be wrong on that. But I don't think that's the case. Again, it's like last year's draft stunk.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad. Like Tijon Salon, who went 6 overall to Charlotte, was like, he shot 33% from the floor and 28% from 3. Now, Cody was 32% from the floor and 26% from 3. Cody was worse from Tijon Salon. Tijon played more, had more opportunities, and was in Charlotte playing like next to a young core and was equally bad. Ron Holland was okay, and there was talks about Ron Holland maybe at 9 for the Jazz or 10 for the Jazz, and like he just went at 5. It's like Steph Castle, the like one rookie of the year. And like might be the guy we look back in 3 or 4 years. Maybe he's awesome. Maybe he ends up being this like this super versatile player. Shot 28% from 3. It's like he might not be playable next to Dylan Harper and De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah.
Reed Shepherd didn't play a lick. Tijon Salon was the number 1 overall pick and like made the all rookie team and was like it was fine, but he averaged 12 points a game. It's just like it was a crappy rookie class.
It was.
And sometimes there are. And if you're gonna fire somebody by getting a not great player at number 10 in a bad rookie class, I think that would feel more reactionary than the Jazz have historically done.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Next up, from Jimbo Slice. How many open roster spots do the Jazz have? Are we really going to keep all 4 picks?
Technically, the Jazz don't have any open roster spots, but I think they have all 15 players filled, right? But they have guys like Johnny Juzang, KJ Martin, Jaden Springer, who are all on non-guaranteed deals. So you don't have to bring any of them back next year and you open up 3 spots. I would note that 2 of the guys you're drafting in the second round, especially at 43 and 53, are almost guaranteed two-way guys. Like almost guaranteed if they make the roster at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're bringing them in to play for the Stars. They're not coming in unless you're getting like someone who randomly just out of nowhere is like, holy cow, this guy can really play and blows you away in summer league. And you're like, yeah, we have to sign this guy to a real deal. And even then, like, you don't have to. You can just sign them to a two-way deal. You've got their rights. And then once you have their two-way rights, that's what they're stuck on. Like they don't really have a lot of other options unless they just want to go play in Europe, which they could. So, they have room to clear spots for 3 guys. And then you can do, a trade for, 1 player for a draft pick if you wanted to for a team that could absorb some of their space, or you could waive somebody else. So, yes, the Jazz have room. Also, Micah Potter, I think, signed a 2-year, 2-way deal, and that expired. So I think Micah's off the team right now. Yeah. Or maybe you just bring him back, like as taking up one of these spots. But and you can always let go of Oscar Tshiebwe or Elijah Harkless or whoever you want. The 2-way deals are not that hard to move around. Yeah. Even if a guy has a longer 2-way deal, you can just waive him if you think it's better to have your second-round draft pick there. So that's how that works. Yeah, the Jazz can easily clear space with a Johnny Juzang or a Jaden Springer or a KJ Martin if they don't want him.
Yeah. Next up, from Derrick Queen. Why is there so much talk to trade Lowry? Are the Jazz hoping for good value in return, or is there thought that he will decline in 3 to 4 years? I think if the Jazz are hoping to be good in 3 to 4 years, Lowry will still be a 7-foot knockdown shooter, even if he is 31, 32.
Yeah, I think he just has value. So that's the nice thing with Lowry. He will have value 3 years from now, 4 years from now. The hard part, I guess, for the Jazz is, is Lowry at $40 million, or I guess $50 million 3 years from now, $40 million when he gets up that high? Like, is that where you want to be paying him when the rest of this roster is finally maturing? And maybe it's okay because these guys would only then be starting to hit their first, their first real NBA contract outside of their rookie deals. Maybe there's some value there and you just keep them around. But if you wanted to get off of that and say, no, you want to, the reason why Jalen Green's interesting is his contract expires before Lowry does.
Yeah.
So you could get back to having some financial flexibility before Lowry's deal expires. No, I think the reason to trade Lowry though is just timeline stuff.
Yes.
Like that's what makes sense. If you don't feel like Lowry's going to be your number one star, and you're paying him like a number one guy, and another team says we're one guy away from being a good playoff team or a contender, Lowry has value, and you get something young back. Like again, I know the Lowry stuff feels weird. You got to go back to when the Jazz acquired him for Donovan Mitchell. And he wasn't a throw-in, but he was a salary matching player who's like good, but was going to be on his third team.
Yeah.
Meaning two other teams had kind of like seen it and said, there's no there. The full there is not going to be there.
Yeah.
The Jazz kind of unlocked that. Like Lowry's still been really valuable for the Jazz. It was a good trade in the fact that they got him back as well, plus the draft picks, and we'll see if the draft picks turn into anything and what they get from Lowry. But the assets are actually probably more valuable than even what they thought they were acquiring when they traded Donovan Mitchell and what they were getting back.
Yeah, and on a national scale, like I feel like there's been talk of the Jazz trading even like past local outlets. And I think that it comes down to worst record in the NBA. They fall down to the 5th pick, and it's sort of like recognized that, or at least from an outside point of view, that the Jazz don't have their guy yet, right? Like their franchise-changing guy. So it's like a lot of people are like, you have Larry Markkinen, who a lot of teams would love.
Yeah.
And that's why he's talked about, for instance, in the 76ers trade.
Yep.
Speaking of which, from Jared Christensen, I've heard some rumors about the Jazz trading Sexton and Collins for Lillard plus picks, while at the same time trading Lowry plus picks for George in the 3rd pick. These work in the trade machine. What are your thoughts?
So after the Lillard injury, I did think it made sense.
Yeah.
And actually may make even more sense now because you have to sprinkle in the Jason Tatum injury in the East.
Yes.
And say like, do the Bucks feel like they could run it back with a retooled roster around Giannis and actually be able to compete?
Yeah.
And the problem is if you have $50 million sitting on the sidelines in Damian Lillard and no value and he's still on the roster, no, you can't.
Yeah.
But if you can get some players back for Lillard that can help them win, maybe Giannis is so good that he could put together a Pacers-like run and then you get to the finals.
True.
Because he's just the best player on the floor in all of these series, whether that's against Cleveland or that's New York or that's Indy. Now, that didn't work this year. But, you lose Brook Lopez. Maybe Brook Lopez goes somewhere else, but you find a center who can step in and help you, and then John Collins steps in and Colin Sexton steps in, which is, the trade for Lillard matches salary-wise, and the Jazz get a future unprotected Milwaukee pick coming up in 2032, which is pretty valuable.
Yeah.
Certainly way more valuable than any asset you're getting for just John or just Colin separately. And Milwaukee gets a short-term win on guys who are also expiring. So actually, if they wanted to hit reset entirely in the offseason next year, they could trade Giannis. They could have all this money coming off the books. They're off of Lillard a year earlier than they expected. And they have, $80 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Plus whatever they're getting back for Giannis, and they can truly hit the reset button, because whoever trades for Giannis is giving up a bunch of unprotected firsts, and maybe Milwaukee can find a way to get some of their own first back in this trade. That's the value for them. And again, like we said, the value is the Jazz get a really high upside pick. That makes some sense for me. Yeah. It still does. And that way you don't have to be like, how did the Jazz tank next year without tanking? Well, you have a $50 million player who's on the sidelines.
Yeah.
Like, you can't play John Collins or Colin Sexton because they're not on your roster, and you can't play Lillard because he's hurt. And then he's coming back to Utah, and there's like some good feeling there.
Yeah.
And then maybe he comes back a year from now at $60 million on an expiring contract, and the Jazz can play him or trade him again with the expiring deal and maybe try and get something back there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the concept in the sense there. Man, I have a hard time believing that the best the 76ers could do for Paul George in the 3rd pick is Larry Markkinen.
Yeah.
The numbers work, and the value for the 76ers there is they get out of Paul George's contract earlier with a younger player who's healthy and still fits what they're doing, and might be, I don't know if he's actually a better player than Paul George. He probably isn't. Like Lowry's probably not better than Paul George right now, but Paul George doesn't play very much because he gets hurt a lot, including last year. But if they felt like, ooh, this was really bad, this is really ugly, like I get trying to get off Paul George. If I were the 76ers, Paul George in 3, like I better get a ton back. Like I better get Lowry in the 5 back at least. I think a lot of people think it's like just Paul George and the 3 for Lowry. Like that's a really steep price to pay for Lauri Markkanen, in my opinion, unless you hate Paul George.
I was about to say.
You'd have to really hate Paul George.
But I feel like the reason you do that is because granted, there was a lot of injuries last year, but like, how old is Paul George? Like 34?
He's like 34, yeah. He's up there.
Like maybe the concern is that like, this is Paul George now. Like, because didn't he have like 10 points a game last year?
Yeah, he was not good.
Yeah. So I guess that's the concern. But like, I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like you would have to throw in the 5th pick though. I think I agree with you there. Like, I don't think you're just doing that because if the Jazz had the 3rd and the 5th pick, that would be crazy.
Yeah, they'd be in a good spot.
Yeah,
I think that would like really accelerate their rebuild, and then of course they would try and flip Paul George after giving him a year to just go out there and play, show he can still score 20 points a game, and sucker the Miami Heat into trading for him, or the Lakers into trading for him, or whatever. That's the goal there for the Jazz. Maybe I'm totally off. Maybe I'm just totally off on the value there, and so I have been before, but. If you could do Lowry for Paul George in 3, I think you would do it. Yeah. Absolutely, you would do it. I don't see it without future draft capital also from the Jazz, including probably the 5th pick this year. So, but yeah, that would totally remake your roster if you lost John Collins, Colin Sexton, and Lauri Markkanen for Paul George, Damian Lillard next year, not this coming season, but the season after, and the 3rd overall pick and a future unprotected Bucks pick. Like you add your draft capital even more and then get another tradable piece in Paul George.
That'd be a crazy haul.
And we know the Jazz have been interested in Paul George in the past.
Yeah. So. Next up from Cam Young. With Austin Ainge joining the front office, do you think it's now more likely that the Jazz are open to trading some younger players because Austin is not emotionally attached to them as his selection?
Yes.
Yep. I agree.
And that was probably going to come anyways. Again, like it's kind of funny. Like you look at, have the Jazz done a good job? And we still don't know what Taylor Hendricks is going to turn into. We have no idea. He might be nothing. If like of the 6 picks you have, the hard part is if your 6 picks you have, if the 3 best players end up being Isaiah Collier, Bryce Sensabaugh, and Kyle Filipowski, it's actually like not bad. Yeah. It's kind of funny because they all fit next to each other. None of them are great defensive players, but you've got a point guard, you've got like a 2-3, and you've got a 4-5. Like conceivably, there's no overlap there. They could play. They could be a part of your future. They have a lot of offensive value. The hard part is they were drafted 27, 29, and 32 versus 9, 10, and 15, which is, I think, where Keontae was drafted. Yeah. You do really kind of have to just stop caring about where guys were drafted. I think that's a way you can get yourself in kind of the sunk cost fallacy of being like, well, he was the 5th pick, so he better be good, or he's the 15th pick, so he better be good, or the 9th pick, so he better be good. When it's just like, well, just Paul Millsap was really good, and you drafted him in the 2nd round. Like, thank goodness the Nuggets didn't say, well, we actually liked Yusuf Nurkic. I think they drafted the same year they drafted Jokic. It's like, well, yeah, Jokic was better, and they moved off of Nurkic, and they moved off of Plumlee, or maybe they got Plumlee back in the trade. Yeah, I think that's what it is. They traded Nurkic to Portland. They're like, yeah, Jokic is better. Well, good for them. They recognize that, even though one of them they paid a much higher value on with a 1st-round pick. Like, you just kind of can't care where guys are drafted once you're on their roster, or they're on your roster, I should say. So, in that sense, yes, I think Austin Ainge should probably be more willing, or will be more willing to trade guys. Also, again, though, some of the things remain true. Taylor's coming off a major injury. He's going to have very little trade value. Cody's coming off of arguably the worst rookie season in lottery history. He's not going to have any trade value. Keontae, that's why Keontae becomes like really interesting as a trade piece, right? Like statistically, his efficiency's bad, but raw production, he's 15 points a game. He's 6 assists and 4 rebounds. It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
And if you think like, hey, the Jazz don't know how to teach guys how to shoot, and we do. Like, we think we can get 4 more percentage points out of him as on the floor and the 3-point line. Okay, and then he's up to 43% from the floor and 37% from 3, and there's like at least like a salvageable player there.
Yeah.
So that's where you might get interesting. And then, I don't know, do you not like Isaiah? Do you not like Kyle Filipowski? Or do you not like Bryce Sensabaugh? I think there's reasons to like all those guys, and they're cheap, and they're still young, and there's still some upside there.
And to talk about the emotional attachment to your own selections, I do think I agree. Austin Ainge coming in is like, I wouldn't be surprised if like Keontae gets traded. But also Danny Ainge had an interview also recently on the KSL Sports Zone, and he basically said like Boston traded Marcus Smart, the heart of that team, and won the championship the next year
to get Kristaps.
Yeah, exactly. Like there is you load up as many young players as you can, and then eventually you move them around to fit the puzzle together. So I think that it was coming eventually, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Austin hiring speeds it up a bit.
Danny is notorious for not being overly romantic or quote unquote loyal about players.
Yeah.
Like he said, you trade, and he didn't trade Marcus Smart. That was actually Brad Stevens.
Yes.
And Austin, you know. You just want to get better. You want to win titles. These guys are about winning titles, and they want to get closer to winning titles. So, sometimes you have to be willing to trade guys who are the, quote, heart and soul of your team to win. And by the way, the players do that too. You know, Ray Allen signs with Miami.
Yeah.
He leaves Boston, and Boston fans hate Ray Allen now. So it happens. So you can't get too romantic about the guys that are on your roster, and I don't think the Angels will.
Another question about the hiring. Do you think the Jazz are more or less likely to make a move for a star player after hiring Austin Ainge?
You know, the funny thing is Austin can come in and just be like, well, no, I'm starting a rebuild. And the Jazz are like, well, we're 3 years into this. And Austin's like, no, I'm starting a rebuild.
Yeah.
Like, you gave me the job. I have leeway. Mm-hmm. I don't want to feel like I have to win next year. So why would I spend all this capital that we have now to try and win? Now, if he feels like he knows like a value piece that the Jazz didn't recognize before, go ahead and do it. I don't think he came in necessarily with a mandate to do that.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know if this makes sense, but I feel like the Jazz are more likely to trade for a star player, and they're also more likely to bottom out now that they've hired Austin
both
Ainge.
odds increased, even though you can probably only do one or the other.
Yeah.
But so radio's a funny thing. I can tell when guys are doing their first radio show.
Yeah.
Because it's like they've had takes saved up their whole life for like 10 years. Like, if I was a radio host, this is what I would say. And they come on, and their first day, they unleash all their takes, and then that's Monday, and then Tuesday, like, I don't have anything to say. Yeah. It's like, right, that's the job, is actually what do you do Tuesday through Thursday when Monday you've had all your takes saved up. I guess in the sense, Austin Ainge is like, he's been waiting to be the guy. So there's a chance he just like has a loaded gun and is like, I just can't wait to unload all this, and like, these are all the things I wanted to move. And like, everyone has missed on Jonathan Kuminga, and everyone has missed on X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to go get those players and show the league that I'm smarter than they are. That's possible. Mm-hmm. But at the same point, you could get to the point where he's like, well, I don't like any of these players. I don't think these players are particularly close. I don't see them as being on my roster when I'm winning again. So I'm going to trade all of them and start over. Yeah. That's why we say there's like kind of increased values for both. Yeah. He could do one or the other.
And it's like, I don't have any examples of this specifically in the front office, right? But you have examples of ownership. Matt Ishbia comes in, we're trading for Kevin Durant.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
And then it just completely backfires on them. And I feel like owners, these billionaires, probably have a little bit more ego than people in the front office do.
Yeah.
Like, there's ego in
huge
sports,
egos,
to be honest.
Yeah.
But I think that there's bigger odds on both ends. And it's interesting. I think there will be stuff that happens before the draft.
What I do feel very confident is the roster that we saw finish the year last year is not going to reflect what we see the Jazz to open next season.
Yes.
There shouldn't be an appetite for it. It didn't work. It was hard to watch. It wasn't particularly, it didn't have the returns that I think the Jazz wanted, either in obviously the number one overall draft pick, even though they had the worst record. And changing the roster doesn't guarantee you get the number one overall pick, but even the development of your players within that, what the roster was they had built, I don't think they achieved what they felt like they could have.
Yeah. All right. Next question from Jeremy Fairbanks. Any info on the new City Edition jersey and when it's supposed to come out?
I think there's a chance we already know the 3 Jazz jerseys this year.
Yeah.
Like, they released the black one in December or January. We know the white one's going to come out this year.
Yep.
And they still have the purple one. Ryan has released the photos of the shorts of the white and the purple one. So the white one's coming in and the black one's new. Like, I kind of think that might be the rotation.
Yeah, I think it's the 3.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there is a City jersey that's going to come in. I don't know. And yes, I have heard that the retro Jazz Note logo is a thing. I don't know what it's going to be. Yeah. But it may be as simple as like, it's just going to be on the Fanatics hats. Or like, the Fanatics will have jerseys that you can buy that have it on there, but like doesn't mean the Jazz are going to be wearing it. Or there's like a baby blue one coming in. Like, I think we might know what the 3 jerseys are. I could be wrong. Maybe there is a City jersey coming in that I don't know about. But like, I think these are the 3 jerseys. But if I'm wrong, I'm fine being wrong on jersey stuff. That's fine.
I was about to say, ever since like, what was it, like a year and a half ago, you broke whatever the jersey news was, and everyone's
it was like going to be a lot of mountains.
Yeah.
And there were, and I was right. Yeah, right. Like, but yeah, I kind of think these are the 3 jerseys. Maybe I'm totally wrong.
Yeah.
I'm not all jersey guy. Yeah.
Next question from Just Jazz Basketball. If we ended up with the 3rd and the 5th pick, could Trey Johnson and Ace Bailey coexist? Trey played point guard before going to Texas. Do you think he could be a point guard long term in the league?
I don't think so. He's got some of the, like, he's got the ball handling. He's pretty good at that. He's probably better in a pick and roll and like be able to be a playmaker. But it's like, I just did not, I don't know if I ever saw him once make like a true advantage read. Yeah. Like I said the escape passes was the word I think I used for him. He's like, just a lot of his passes are reactionary, which is fine. Like, because the worst passing is premeditated. Yes. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to do just because I've been trained in doing some of these things, but I'm not reading the defense. I'm not even reading the offense. I just know, like, when I run this play, there's either a guy in the corner or there's a lob threat, and I'm throwing it regardless. It's like, well, you didn't generate an advantage there, so why did you throw that pass?
Yeah.
But they're just like, well, that's what I've been trained to do. And then there's the reactionary passes, which the guys are like, I run the pick and roll, and the help came from the corner, so I kick it to the corner. It's like a good reactionary pass. It's totally fine. That's where, like, Keontae George is. Mm-hmm. And then there's the anticipatory pass, which is what you see, like, every Jazz fan had the moment of last year watching Isaiah Collier, like, ooh. Like, you had a couple of moments like, oh, yeah. I didn't see that pass.
Yes.
Like, I haven't seen anyone on the Jazz make that pass. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what you're getting from Dylan Harper. That's what you're getting from Con Knipple. Mm-hmm. That's what you're getting from Kasparis Yakashonis. I didn't see those from Trey Johnson. I never once saw the like, oh, how did he see that? Yeah. Like, that was impressive. I didn't see that at all in the footage I watched of him. Now, maybe it was Texas. Maybe it was the bad offensive system. That certainly is possible, but I don't think so.
That's something that I want to go back to our Trey Johnson breakdown, because I said I think Trey could benefit from a Keontae George-like rookie season where he has the ball in his hands and it's like, develop, you know?
Yeah.
And Keontae came in with that passing upside, and in year two, like, undebatably he was a better passer. But with that said, Isaiah Collier was levels and levels ahead of him as both a passer and a reader of defenses.
Yeah, and created advantages for everyone all over the court. Like, everybody was better, including Keontae, once they were on the court with Isaiah Collier.
Yes, and I think that Trey and Keontae are very similar in terms of their playmaking.
Yep. So maybe he gets up to 5 assists.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's like point guard 5 assists.
Exactly.
Where I think Con Knipple might be able to play like, well, he only runs, 10% of your possessions the entire game playing point guard. But as we talked about, like, creates the advantages a la Joe Ingles. Mm-hmm. The way Joe ran like some real point guard stuff, even if he was not like your true necessary backup point guard because somebody else was on the roster was able to do it. Versus like Jordan Clarkson, who draws attention and creates plays for others out of drawing attention for them, but it's not necessarily like anticipatory trades or passes, I should say. So that's kind of the trade-off, and that's where I think Trey Johnson is. And again, it's valuable. Like, I think there's way more playmaking there than he gets credit for based on his assist total, but it is not like the high IQ NBA moving forward guy like Isaiah Collier, that I think has a lot of value as like an advantage creator. Yeah. So that's just the difference there. And there's value to him. And look, if he's hitting, threes at 40% and shooting, 5 a game or 10 a game, like he's a really good player.
Yes.
So but no, I wouldn't. I kind of hate bringing players in and be like, I think we're going to turn him into a point guard. Like the best case that we've seen of this recently is Devin Booker, who came in as a shooting guard, like basically like a pure shooter at Kentucky, got to Phoenix, got a lot of leeway to like develop as a weird like 70-point scorer.
Yeah.
And then they were like, well, let's see some more playmaking. And he turned into a much better playmaker and much better defensive player. And still the best the Suns have ever been is when Chris Paul was on the team, right? Like doing everything else and not making Devin Booker have to make all those decisions. And then when they have since going to the finals, they're like, we need Tyus Jones, or like we need these guys. I think it was Monty Morris last year, whoever was like, they keep looking for a point guard because they recognize even though you can turn a shooting guard into a point guard, having a guy who's done it his whole life, run reps there the whole time is still more valuable. Yeah. And I believe that. And the NBA gets smarter. Offenses have to be so smart at every position now that like, I think utilizing Trey Johnson as a 2, where like he's been and increasing his value there while playing next to a really smart point guard is probably the best case scenario.
Just want to give a quick shout out to Jazzy Mammoth. They asked about logo and city edition, which we already touched on.
Yep.
From Elk Bowie. Lots of talk of us getting the 3rd pick. I feel like it's more likely we make a move to get a late lottery to make up for our last lottery pick.
Okay. Meaning to make up for Cody Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I could see that, but I don't. I think that the lowest, like if the Jazz are still making a lottery pick, I feel like it's like a Wizards type trade like we talked about, like going down a spot and then moving your other pick up.
Yep. Or Brooklyn down to like 8 because the Jazz like, we know Con Knippel's going to be on the board at 8 or whatever. Or again, like they're confident, like the Jazz want Kasparis Yakashunas. No, Yakashunas. No, he's going to be there at 8 or wherever Brooklyn is picking. And they're like, we'll take 2 first-round picks from you, 2 more first-round picks, like to drop down to 8, get the guy, and still have 2 more firsts. I could see that happening, conceivably. Yes. I don't mean I can see it happening, but like I could get the value there. Again, I could see that happening. You know, if you were to move 21 to get up to like 14, like you might have to give up like the Lakers lightly protected top 4 pick. Like I think that's too valuable. Like I'm not doing that. And I don't think you're moving from 21 to 15 with your 2 second-round picks. Like the second round stinks. Yeah. So there's actually a little difficulty there. Maybe if you were to throw in like Keontae and someone was like, hey, we actually really like Keontae and we want somebody we don't want a rookie. We want someone who's 2 years down the line. Maybe you could do that there. Or maybe you do like, where are the Magic picking? Let me pull up the draft order. Like 16?
16.
So like if you were like Colin Sexton for 16, or Colin Sexton in 21 for 16 and a salary match from them, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope or something like that. I could see, I guess, something like that. And then you try and flip KCP this season. I could see something like that. Yeah. If there was like somebody who had fallen at 16, you're like, oh man, I can't believe Colin Murray-Boyles is still on the on the thing. And that's where it gets interesting. I haven't done this yet because I'll do like one mock draft, and I think maybe we'll just do the mock draft together.
Yes.
Like all these guys that I've kind of looked at in the ancillary as I'm looking at like the top 5 option for the Jazz, like you just start counting the names and it's like, man, the gap between number 5 and 21, obviously the quality of player is huge, but like there's 20 names that we talk about. It's like, well, that means inevitably 4 or 5 of these guys are going to be on the board. You know what I mean? And it's Asa Newell, it's Colin Murray-Boyles. It's why I said like there's a world where Jeremiah Fears is on the board at 21. Derrick Queen's got to get slotted in there. Common Malawach has to go there and doesn't have value for the Jazz necessarily. Like all of the European players that are coming over have to slot in somewhere here. Carter Bryant, Nate Clifford,
Will Riley,
Liam McNeely. Like all of these dudes have to go somewhere. Yeah. Like Cedric Howard has to go somewhere. Danny Wolf has to go somewhere. I might have just named 6. We might be at 21 already. Like that's the point in the draft where it's like trading up to 15. You better know that guy's not going to be on the board at 21. I think there's just a chance that guy's on the board at 21. Unless, again, it's like, holy cow, we had him at 7 on our board. Like, how is he on the board right now at 15? Now we're moving up to get him.
I think this draft, it's like, 1, 2, 3 to like 7, anything can happen.
Yeah, like there is a real chance that Ace Bailey goes to like the Wizards.
Yeah.
It's not high.
But there's
like it's in the realm of possibilities.
Yeah. Because like, I feel like another thing that's funny about drafts is like, and again, the Jazz, I believe earlier said like, oh, we're looking at like 8 guys for this pick, right? But like in drafts, there is a history. Like a good example is who fell Rockets last year?
Cam Whitmore.
Yeah. Like there were teams that they were available from, like, we didn't talk to him, we didn't work him out. We're gonna go with the guy we had on our board.
Which is why guys fall.
Yes.
All of a sudden, they've never talked to Cam. They didn't have his medicals. That doesn't happen as much. The league mandated you get their medicals, but like. Yes. Oh, we never talked to this guy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to tell you. That's why Dylan Harper's smart. He's like talking to everybody, which I think is actually a kind of a charming aspect of what he's doing, as opposed to being like, I'm only talking to 2 teams. I think that's silly. He's like talking to everybody. It's like, yeah, if someone wants to trade up or I fall, good opportunity that I'm there. So you got to be careful playing that game.
Yeah. Next up from Quinn, he points out the trade for a guy like Dame, injured next year, get some vets out. We talked about the prospect of it. He asked, can you see the Jazz actually doing it? Yeah.
I could. Yeah. For another future. So here's the thing. Again, like where the Jazz could get really interesting. Again, it's why the clip has been online. And like I talked about it right after the Jazz fell to 5. Like the problem was, for some reason, it felt like every asset the Jazz was tied to having the number 1 overall pick this year. It's like, it's not true. All the strengths the Jazz have were still strengths that happened before May 12th or whenever the lottery was to where they are today. Like, the future Suns pick that's unprotected in 2031 is still an awesome pick. The 2030 picks or whatever you have from Minnesota and Cleveland are still really interesting. You only get one of them because you've traded it to the Suns for that future unprotected pick. But those are still really interesting. You know, you still have this Lakers pick that's only top 4 protected. And while it may have lost some value after the Luka trade, it's like LeBron's probably off the roster at that point. Did they retool? Like, they didn't get anything for LeBron. They didn't trade LeBron. So then what? Like, there's some value there. If you one day want to flip those, like, to get your player, that's where they have big time value for these teams. So, like, the Suns, again, go into a rebuild, and they're like, oh, man, like, we're rebuilding. We got to get our picks back. The only option we have is to trade Devin Booker to the Jazz to get the 2031 pick back, right? Because we're going to be bad and we need to get it back. Like, those are still out there. That's still on the table.
Yeah.
Like, you still have that valuable pick. So the reason I say is you go to Milwaukee now and you say, hey, give us your future unprotected pick. And that's not to get somebody from Milwaukee. That's not what I mean by bringing up Devin Booker. I just mean, like, future unprotected picks have huge value. So if you were to trade for Dame and the 2032 unprotected Bucks pick, or 2033, whatever it would be, I think it can only go out to 2032. If you could combine the Bucks unprotected pick and the Suns unprotected pick and Dame's $60 million salary, like, what could you get? Or 2 unprotected picks on Lauri Markkanen, who's $50 million, and a young player. Like, what could you get? Like, again, that's where the Jazz still kind of have this ammo to get a superstar player that they haven't spent just because they fell to 5 in the lottery, even though it felt like everything decreased in value. It truly didn't. So, yes, I could see the Jazz doing that and seeing real value there.
Last question here, and decided to end this one. One, it's recent, but also ties in with the NBA Finals right now. The only playoff-style game I remember from last year was against OKC. Collins and Keontae were the only ones that could create a shot for themselves while Lauri was shut down, albeit by Dort. How much stock do you guys take in that? Which of our guys do you think would be playoff performers?
That is a real question. Like, Lowry's inability to create shots, even when the Jazz have tried. Like, 2 years ago, the Jazz started toying with the idea of, like, Lowry at the elbow, making reads. And, like, Clay just killed him. Like, Lowry tried to run it, I think, probably like 5 possessions in a row, or like out of 10 against the Warriors. And I don't know if the Jazz got a single good possession out of it, because Clay was just like, oh, I'm way better than you. And he was. Like, this was even old, like, washed Clay. Like, before he got traded to Dallas, but like near washed Clay or signed with Dallas. And just ate Lowry alive. So like, in that sense, that's where like Lowry's value is questionable. Like his ability to create shots in isolation, or even like you put him at the elbow. And it's why, you know, a guy like Keontae still has kind of some funky, interesting, like, I can create my own shot. And that's where Trey Johnson really has value in the draft, right? Like, Trey creates his shot the same way Keontae does, but they go in half again more often, it seems like. So that's really valuable. That there's some real value there. That's what's so hard about what the Jazz are trying to do, and why last year's environment of, like, tanking and not having guys on the floor was so, I guess, harmful, I guess, in development, is like, what did you actually learn? What do you actually know about what some of these guys can do? Because, you look at 2 years ago, the game before the All-Star break, like, it was. I think maybe Lowry was on the court in that game, but, like, the Warriors couldn't stop Keontae George. It's like, okay, so maybe Keontae has a little bit of value there. Like, what can he create for himself? Bryce Sensabaugh is actually, I think, showing some value. Like, there are times when it's like, you can't stop Bryce. He's such a good shooter. He doesn't care if there's a hand in his face. Like, he's the guy, good defense, better shot. Like, he might be the best at that on the Jazz roster right now. Like, maybe even better than Lowry, even though Lowry's 7 feet tall. I like that there. Play that more this year. Do that a lot more this year, and actually see what those guys who win, like, they're just the top of your scouting report, what do they do? Where Lowry got taken out of it. So, I think there's value there, and I think the Jazz probably feel like they haven't gotten enough of those reps.
If we're talking about who would be the best playoff performers on the Jazz right now, because, like, of course, this is not going to be the roster when the Jazz eventually do make the playoffs. I would say, like, John Collins, because I feel like John Collins has the perfect blend of being able to get inside and also just spot up. I think he could have some good playoff games.
I think Colin could too.
But with Colin and Keontae, I think, like, my head instantly goes to, like, it would be a hit or miss for them in the playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, they can't be your number one guy. You know, you look at, like, Aaron Wiggins or Obi Toppin. Obi Toppin has a great game 1 for the Pacers. He doesn't need to be great every game. No, they lost game 2 and he was terrible. But, like, if he's good, you win. Great. And then if he's not, you need Pascal Siakam and you need Tyrese Halliburton, you need Miles Turner or Nesmith or whatever. Ben Mathurin to be better. Great. Like, fine. The game in the playoffs where Colin Sexton scores 20, you win.
Yes.
Every time. Because he's the 5th or 6th best player on your roster, and that's where his value is. That's like where I see those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know if the Jazz have like a top 3 playoff guy right now on their roster, and certainly not anyone slotted in the right position. That's the hard part for Lowry is like, yeah, if you're trying to make him your number 1 guy, he's not good enough.
No.
But if you get the number 1 guy and he's all of a sudden the 3rd best player, is that a better spot for him?
Yeah.
Where you can say like, yes, I know in the postseason he's going to be reliable as the 3rd best guy. That's where, again, when you look at the other potential trade that we talked about for the Jazz, when it came to like, if you were to trade John Collins and you were to move him to Golden State for Jonathan Kuminga, like Jonathan Kuminga actually like showed he could play in the postseason.
Yeah.
Like that's where he doesn't fit at all what the Warriors are doing. And he wants to be a number 1, 2, or 3 guy, and he's not that good on the Warriors, but like maybe on the Jazz he is, and he steps in and he can defend Ant and be big and strong and move him around, and then he wants to eat a lot of possessions. And I get he hasn't shot the ball well from 3 in his career, but like maybe he can be a guy who actually scores 30 in a playoff game like he did already in this postseason.
Yes.
Had 3 straight games where he scored 20 or more in the playoffs. Like, okay, that starts to get a little bit interesting there. Like there's more value there, and the Warriors get value because John Collins comes in as their 5th guy on the playoff team, which is what they need and not what Jonathan Kuminga wants to be, which is the 2nd guy on the playoff team.
Yeah.
So that's the rearranging, that's the team building, and that's the hard part of it. You know, and that does happen. You know, those types of trades do get made where a guy is miscast as a number 1 overall player, but he goes to a team where he can be the 3rd best player and has value, which is where Houston might have interest in a guy like Lowry, or Golden State might have interest in a guy like John Collins.
All right. I think that's it.
Todd has one more question really quickly.
Oh,
he asked 2 kind of late in our recording. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly. Todd also asked, sorry, filling time here. How good is Milwaukee with CJ McCollum, John Collins, Kelly Olynyk, Johnny Juzang, and Keontae? What's the most you'd give up for Zion playing 41 games and semi-take? I think with Zion's latest rape allegations, he's just out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And even like after that, Joe Dumars and the Pelicans were like, we're building around him. I think they realized like his trade value was absolutely zero.
Yeah.
Zero. Like it was teetering. He kind of had a good year last year. Some of the off the court stuff kind of rebounded a little bit. And you're like, okay, maybe we can look past like the stalking thing or the weird, like in a way he wasn't stalking. He was getting stalked, I think.
Yeah.
And there's like another off the court, like major thing. It's like, all right, dude. Like I just don't think you can do it. No. I really don't think you can do it anymore with Zion. So I would drop him from the conversations.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. But
and wasn't there a report that was like random NBA exec thinks that Zion's worth is like late picks and dead salary?
Yeah. Like yeah. So and I don't think the Thunder or the Pelicans would trade him for that little.
Yeah.
So anyways, late question from Todd, but try to answer it there. Anyways. All right. Long show.
Yes.
Long mailbag. Appreciate everyone tuning in and listening. Again, we'll record at least 2 more podcasts before the draft. Next week, let's just plan on doing like a lot of guys.
Yeah.
We'll talk about kind of a lot of the different draft players, including more of the guys who are going to be available at like 21 and maybe a couple of dark horse guys for 5. But I think really for the most part, we've probably covered it. Maybe 1 or 2 names that could be in the conversation at 5. But we'll talk about some names that just Jazz fans would be familiar with. And of course, we'll take your mailbag questions. Thanks as always for listening. We'll be back with you again next week.